Hey there, Nick is here. In this video, we're going to go over a new feature of Docker Scout called health scores, and that's what we see over here. So this is a way to get a security assessment of your Docker images hosted on the Docker Hub. So throughout this video, we're going to cover things like how the grading system works, how some of these policies weigh into your score. We're also going to cover things like who can see it, who can't see it, how do you get access to it, is it useful, is it security theater. We're also going to cover things like wish list items that I would like to see, considering this is a brand new offering from Docker. We're also going to go over how I scored a D all the way up to an A here, just by looking at some of the feedback that health scores gave me. So yeah, let's start with the grading system over here. And it takes inspiration from a lot of systems that you might see in school, where A is the highest grade that you can get and F is the lowest. Now, it is worth pointing out in US schooling systems, typically it goes A, B, C, D, F, and there is no E in between, but in some European countries and other countries around the world, E is a score that you can get. It's a little bit better than an F, and it is worth pointing out here, if you check out Docker's documentation here, it will list E as an available score to get. Here's a little table here, so you can see E is a little bit better than an F here. So yeah, I'll link to this in the description if you want to check out the gory details. But when it comes to getting an actual grade, like how do you get an A or what made you get a D, this is all based on some of the policies that you have here, and I'm not going to read all of them out, but yeah, there's all information here too in their documentation. For example, if you want to see more details about, high profile vulnerabilities, then you can go and check it out and see how all that works there. But yeah, the weighting system's pretty interesting. So something like a critical vulnerability is going to have more impact on your score than something like an AGPL v3 license existing somewhere in one of your dependencies. And yeah, if you go to their documentation here, then the weighting system is all covered here. If you want to learn a little bit more details about that, you can see, criticals are 20, AGPL is 5. So that's the, a nutshell of how the grading systems work. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about how you might get access to it. So currently, at least at the time of recording this video, it is in invite-only beta mode, which means you can reach out to Docker on their community Slack or DM them on Twitter, and I'm sure they'll happily accept your request if you want to get an invite. But by the time you watch this video, this may become generally available, and the plan here is it to be a paid offering. So, check out Docker's pricing page for more details on that. But yeah, let's say now that you have access to it in some way, and you want to just see your scores. How do you actually see them and who can't see them, etc. So in this case, I'm just logged into my Docker Hub account here. Here's one of my images, and on the general tab here, you can see the score listed here. You can also go to the different tags that you have, and you can see your scores here. And you can go to your list of repositories, and then you can see your scores over here as well. But, this is a public image. However, you're not going to be able to see the score here, because in order to see the score, you need to meet two different criteria. One, you need to belong to the organization of where this repository is hosted. In this case, the org is nickjj, and since you likely don't belong to that org, you're not going to be able to see it right away from that condition failing. The other condition is you need at least read access to the repository. Now, considering this is a public image, you do have read access to this one because you can pull it down and run it. Yeah, but since you're not in the org, you won't be able to see it. So yeah, if you meet both of those criteria, then you'll be able to see some scores right away for both public and private images, which is quite nice. So now it comes down to, is it useful? Is it useful for solo developers? What about like larger organizations? And, I would classify myself as typically like a solo developer or a small teams developer. And, this is pretty useful to me because, I logged into the Docker Hub and then I saw this one score here, which is a D. And I was just like, no, we're going to have to fix that one. So there's like this gamification process here, or, some open challenge to me to be like, okay, we need to go from a D to something better because there's no way I'm going to be able to sleep at night knowing that I have a D here. And it's funny too, because it's like when I was in school, I didn't really care that much about grades. I cared about playing video games and doing some web programming stuff. But in this case, for things that I care about, yeah, that needed to be changed. So right away, it basically prompted me to take an action. And more importantly, it prompted me to take an action because, some of these policies were a little bit off, right? For example, this one 6 months ago when I got a D, it's because I was using an older version of Python. This happens to use a Python web server or whatever. So the base image is the official Python image. But yeah, we'll get into more details of how I fix that over time here. But yeah, when it comes to something like larger organizations, is it useful there? I certainly think so. For example, imagine you're in a bigger organization and you have something like 100 repositories listed over here. It would be pretty nice if you can just go and see out of those 100, maybe 18 of them are scoring a D or a C or an F or an E, like whatever, like something that you might want to take action on. So this gives you a way to, very quick glance, to see what images need a little bit of love. So yeah, bigger org, a lot of images. You can definitely figure out what images need some actions taken there very quickly just by getting a high-level assessment there on the score, which is pretty nice. So yeah, I think it's totally useful in that regard there. But But then you might be asking yourself, like, I don't know, is this kind of like security theater? Like, how useful are some of these policies here? Is it really going to move the needle to make my images more secure? And by the way, if you haven't heard that phrase, like security theater, I don't know, it really has a pretty subjective definition, but typically it means like, an organization or a team or a person might just like take some actions just for the sake of like, checking like compliance checkboxes in case they get sued. They can be like, well, I did this, and that, but even though, maybe it didn't really help them that much security wise. But I think some of the policies here are definitely quite useful. For example, if you have a whole bunch of different critical or high vulnerabilities, that will impact your application if you have a popular app, or it doesn't even need to be popular, but yeah, someone can exploit your application, do something, and then who knows, maybe they have access to file system within a container, but now they have access to private data. Like there's all sorts of bad things that can happen. So it's nice to always keep tabs on that one. And then when it comes to something like outdated images, sure, if you're running a version from, I don't know, an older Python version that's not maintained anymore. It's a nice little reminder here to be like, hey, by the way, another point release for Python's available. Go check it out, maybe update it. That may both increase the security of your application as well as the performance, because typically, as newer versions of programming languages come out, typically they get more efficient. So again, it's definitely nice to have there too. And then something like the default non-root user, sure, you should be running your containers as a non-root user. That's always a good thing here too. So it's nice to be reminded of that one as well. Here we can see other things too, like high profile vulnerabilities. That's a little bit separate than critical vulnerabilities. There's a whole different classification for them. Yeah, these are all quite useful things that will move the needle to make your images quite a bit more secure. So yeah, let's go over how I actually went from a D all the way to an A in this image here. So this is available on Docker Hub. I'll leave a link to this one in the description here, but I do have a couple different commits here on what I did to make it go from a D all the way to an A. Now, the good news is it was really easy to go from a D to a B. All I really did was update the Python version to a different version here. So if I go here, we can see, I bumped the Python version to 3.12.4. And that was one thing. But then a couple days ago, actually, 3.12.5 came out. So yeah, I just updated again to there. And that immediately gave me a B. So, okay, that's not too bad. You can maybe sleep better at night knowing you got a B. But how do you get an A? So when I went back to my score over here, it was this supply chain one that was failing. This was also pretty interesting to me. I didn't know a whole lot about that one, but I just started Googling around and, I went to Docker's documentation here and figured out like what I needed to actually set to make this work here. And it turns out you just need to build your images using SBOM true here. And what's really nice about this one is, and I've done videos about this one in the past, is, I have a GitHub action set up using the official like Docker build push one. And yeah, that is building, images here for different architectures, like AMD 64 as well as ARM 64. And then, something that's compatible with macOS as well, assuming you have like an M1, 2, 3, etc. But in any case here, inside of this Docker publish YAML file here, all I had to do to get this to pass with an A was add this one line here, like SBOM true, and that's it. Well, not that true, but yeah, just this one line here. In fact, I actually have the commit for it somewhere over here. We can take a look at it in isolation here. It's somewhere up here. So yeah, that was it. So if you're using this GitHub action, then that's all you need to do. If you're not using this GitHub action, maybe you're using GitLab or Bitbucket, or maybe you're just using buildx on the command line, then yeah, you can just add this one flag here and then make sure these other flags are set as well, because the GitHub action, I believe, sets them by default for true. So you didn't need to explicitly set them. But yeah, that was it. So once I did all that, started pushing things up, then I started to see an A here, and that made me pretty happy. I mean, there's like sparkles on this one. It's pretty cool looking. So yeah, that's about it on how to go from a D to an A, at least in the specific case of this Docker image. Now, when it comes to wishlist items, again, this is a brand new offering from Docker. I mean, technically it's not even day one, it's still day 0, considering it's in some beta form here. But yeah, I would really like to see a way to be able to see my score without pushing images up to the Docker Hub. So you can imagine as a developer, you might be testing some code that you have on your dev box, run some like automated test suite, or at least test things manually in the worst case there. And then once you're happy with how it behaves, then you would push it up to production. But in this case here, it seems like, we need to create a new tag and push that up to the Docker Hub before we can get an assessment of our score. So at that point, pushing that tag kind of feels like I'm already pushing in production. So it'd be cool to be able to test that locally somehow. As well. Secondly, another item that I would like to see would be a way to get notified if my score drops. For example, maybe Docker Hub can email me if my score goes from an A down to a B or something like that. Because, you can imagine over time, this Python image right now, as of today of recording this video, it's completely up to date. It's scoring really well, but who knows, 6 months from now, maybe it's going to have quite a few security vulnerabilities. Then it's going to be considered like an outdated base image, and suddenly my A might drop to a C. And it would be cool, yeah, just to get notified there without me needing to go to the Docker Hub on a routine basis, like once a week or something like that, to go and check out that score here. Also, it would be pretty interesting too if Docker can give more, I don't know, specific instructions on how to fix your image here. For example, if you fail one of these here, like no outdated base images, then it knows what image you're using. For example, I might be using something like python.3.12.1. It would be pretty cool if there was like some call out here or somewhere that was like, hey, by the way, you can update to python.3.12.4 if you want to fix that one, instead of me needing to go to like the Docker Hub and then check out what the latest version of Python is and then go back here. It's not a big one, but it's a, maybe an interesting level of polish that can be added later. Lastly, it would be pretty interesting if you can access these scores on the command line, for example. Then you can set this up in your CI server and get some reports back there. It'd be pretty cool. Maybe you can stop your pipeline if you get a D, E, or F or something like that. Or maybe even Docker can add some integrations for GitHub, Bitbucket, or GitLab as well, just to see some reports there in a pipeline. You don't necessarily even need to stop the pipeline, but it'd be really nice just to see your score on every pull request that goes up. This way you have some constant looking to see what your score is. But yeah, I'm pretty excited about this one. I think it's pretty cool. I like the idea in general. So yeah, let us know in the comments below if you signed up for the beta or if you're going to sign up. Also, what are some of your wishlist items that you would like to see, at least based on seeing this video here and seeing how it works. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching the video. If you like it, please give a thumbs up. It really does help a lot. And I will see you in the next video.